G'day everyone. I put on the on-air light because technically I'm filming. I want to take a minute to show you guys the game prototype as I've got it so far, because I've given some allusions to having done some work on it. But in the last week in particular, I've given it a lot of attention, specifically because I want to open up a lot more about it and its development. So I'm working on a main channel video where I go over the entire history of Gatecrash, how it was developed. Obviously we had the vlogs here on this channel sort of showing when it was sort of app-based, sort of how we were developing that. But it's sort of been on ice for a while, especially since the funding got rejected and other priorities took place. And I've mentioned a couple of weeks back that I had a new sort of game prototype that I was excited about. I'd been brewing over that for a long time. It's one of those things where I'll have a mechanic that'll pop into my head on the weekend and slowly gestates and builds, where on our trip away to Melbourne, a couple months back, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, I ended up just in a frenzy of developing stuff. I made blank cards from all the assets that we'd produce, because we have all these art assets, that I just spent 2 days just writing rough prototype mechanics on each of the cards. And I was using those little soy sauce fish heads thing with the little red nose caps. I was using those nose caps as the currency pieces in the game, which now I have much nicer tokens for my prototype. But if you just imagine those are soy sauce lids, that is how I started developing the game. But I developed the rough bones of something I was pretty excited about that captured the vibe of what Gatecrash was, what I always wanted Gatecrash to feel like. It was always wanting to be inspired by sort of MOBAs where you can control several characters, sort of fast-paced gameplay, but a lot of variability. So you could always play with a different character, or you could always play with your few favorites, or your one favorite, and sort of master that and sort of go down the route of finding the best combos and all that stuff. So that has always been the vision of Gatecrash, whereas previously it was for a different format. Now it's being developed as a board game to be self-contained in one sort of package. So in sort of doing that, I want to properly get the ball rolling again. And part of the challenge, there's several challenges. One is my time, and the other is in terms of funding and stuff. I've already spent tens of thousands of dollars producing the version that is on the shelves. And who knows, we may come back to that. But a lot of what that money was spent on was people's time, Rob, Dave, Alicia in particular, developing art, developing lore, developing characters. We ended up with 3 fully finished characters, technically 4 if you consider her companion Chetsu, which is awesome. We actually made really good stuff. And I think that's what was sort of eating away at me, is I want to use this stuff we've made. So I'm going to give you a really brief tour of what the game looks like at this point. It's, again, very work in progress, very prototype. Plenty of stuff may change. And all of this is just handmade prototype assets. But in the next year or two, my hope is to work my way towards being able to properly kickstart it, make proper prototypes, and then make a manufacturable game. So this is what the play space looks like. We've got a central board. It's again changing over time. This version of the board is one hex bigger than the versions that I've otherwise been using. And every changes are made constantly. The implementation of terrain is also a new one. And terrain is just these hex blocks that you can sort of corner off. They're intraversible, except for if your character has flight, they can go over that terrain, but other characters have to go around that terrain. So then there are these energy surge points. There's 6 on the map. And I like the idea that you can roll a couple of dice, and then in the book look at what you got, and it will have the terrain set up for what you rolled. So you'll always have a different labyrinth of terrain to interact with. And every turn, items and energy spawn on these locations. So depending on the amount of players, if you're playing four player with 3 characters each, which would be a pretty crazy game, you might have like 4 items spawning randomly and 4 energy. So the idea is every turn, energy and items spawn, and then you alternate activation, take turns playing your characters. And the aim of the game is to enter here, the gateway in the middle. So you need 10 energy to enter the gateway, and you need to be able to move into it in your turn. Every character has like 3 actions per turn. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do in your actions. But the basic premise of the game is you each start on your location, and you spend the duration of the game gathering energy enough to enter the gateway, but also spending energy because these cards cost energy. So to equip these or use these, that's how much energy stuff costs. You can equip a couple of items, and you can also get energy by stealing it from other people because you build it passively. So like, let's say I've got this much energy and I collect this, like I might be focusing on gathering, but someone else, which is how Dave beat me in the game we played a couple of days ago, just focused on pounding on me and taking my energy. So I was doing all the work gathering the energy and he just reaped all the benefits. So it's one of those fun things where you can strategize in different ways, and it's very interactive, very fast-paced, maneuverable, and all that stuff. Like I was saying, very work in progress, very prototype. But that's like the rough bones of the game. The setting, like this labyrinth, this map, is inside the heart of a dead goddess, and there's just a whole bunch of cool lore and all this stuff that is going to be coming out in that video that I'm recording on the main channel. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Also, because I think it'd be cool to just sort of like use the vlog occasionally to just sort of splurge a bunch of the ideas or changes or whatever it is, as much as I want to be able to do that on the main channel, and that's the video I'm making is all about how I want to start opening up, developing, getting people's ideas and stuff. The reality of YouTube is that I can only do that so much without injuring the channel. So if I do a character design on one of the new Gatecrash characters, I can't do like weekly videos on Gatecrash. I could do one every month or 2, maybe even once every 3 months, because I still have to play the YouTube game to, be a viable business and keep people's bills paid. But here, on the other hand, is where I can just sort of be a little more guiltlessly blabby about it. So, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. But speaking of questions, I'm going to just slink away because I actually took 3 questions from the vlog that I did sharing that I'd sort of made that initial prototype, which has developed quite a bit since then. Here you go, this is one of the old boards. So here are a couple of questions for our question of the day. Kanakchuk 8836 says, will there be cooperative/solo variant to the rules? That's a really good question. It's a little too far off for me to sort of think about that now. For now, at the moment, it is a 2-6 player because you got 6 edges on the hex and everyone starts on an edge. So it's a 2-6 player PvP battle arena. At the moment, there are no plans for a 1-player or cooperative mode. However, the way the game is being built will really quite simply lend itself to that. This is my first time doing this, manufacturing or producing a proper game that will hopefully get on shelves, So I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, which is something I tend to be guilty of. That is something I could look at as an expansion or maybe a stretch goal. But at the moment, I'm focusing on the competitive version of the game. Savio 1261 says, have you tried testing with the community with the tabletop simulator? So I actually made a note on my calendar today to sort of record an extra segment to add into the video. I want to start a little game testing group. I benefit most from local play, seeing people play, interacting with people, doing all that. So I like the idea of setting up it wouldn't be super regular, in terms of once every certain number of weeks or months, But it would be like every now and then when I need a burst of like feedback, and then like I'll basically organize a little event where people can get together and play and give feedback and that sort of thing. So I'm thinking of doing that. But I also do think that it will be beneficial through development to then at some point set it up to be functional on Tabletop Simulator and get more feedback from more people rather than just locally. So yeah, that is something I haven't tried yet, but I'm definitely wanting to do before going into anything close to production. Is I want a lot of people to have played the game, which includes over the internet. So that is something I've considered. I haven't done before, but we'll look into it. And the Morris Norris says, I may have missed something, and sorry if I did, but I got one of the Gatecrash early access cards a while back, and I don't know / remember where to use it. Did I miss something, or were we just waiting for a product release like the one you talked about in this vlog? So that's referring to like a year and a half ago, when it was actually promoted in the video where I did this, where I made Scrap, who's a Gatecrash character, inside Fiery Resin. That's a good example of like my attempt to try and bring Gatecrash development into the main channel, but I did it in a way that like really the focus was the main channel video, was like the resin project. I promoted the Scrap model and some of the other models we were selling, so it was a slight fundraising exercise, but I didn't really talk much about Gatecrash or the lore or whatever it is. This video that I'm working on at the moment that will come out in a couple of weeks is just all of it. It's just like all of the lore, all of that stuff. But this question is referring to, in that video and in that period of time, we sold signed Gatecrash posters as like a way to support early dev, and then also that we would add people to like a beta testing group or list or something like that. So in answer to your question, we have the information somewhere. Rob will probably have to help me dig it up, but we definitely have it because I think there were about like a dozen to 20 people who got it. So it's not like this huge amount, but it's like there's a group of people who are on a list that we can quite easily find. The version of Gatecrash at that time is different to what it is now. So what beta testing it looks like would be different. However, in reference to something like Tabletop Simulator, that is where that would come into play. So as soon as I start opening up to testing a more fleshed out version of the game, I would first contact those people, because rather than opening up to the wider community, as people who sort of got a placeholder as a beta tester, that is something I would want to make good on. So I hope that answers your question. It doesn't count for nothing. Please know that any support that has been given to Gatecrash has gone to Gatecrash. It's just needed to evolve by necessity, and I'm excited by what it's evolving into. But with that said, the promises that were made will obviously by necessity have to shape as the game shapes, but I intend on making good on that and fulfilling that, so that'll be fun. Anyways, that's my little update. I am filming today Brandon Sanderson characters from Description. So I'm doing characters from Description, aiming to do 6, which is pretty ambitious, but I'm just doing it all Sanderson edition because I figure he's got so many characters, they're actually not portrayed in film and TV and stuff yet. So it's kind of like a free-for-all. I could just, anything I do is correct. So that'll be fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Keen on your questions and feedback and thoughts. I'm very excited about this one, and the video that I'm putting together is very passion-filled and has had a lot of work put into the preparation for it. And there's a lot to show. Like, there's so much that we get to fit in there in terms of the lore and the work we've built already. So it's pretty exciting. See you later.